You're listening to my conversation with Dominique Rose Van-Winther, CEO and Chief AI Evangelist at Final Upgrade, an AI consulting firm. In this insightful discussion, Dominique shares her views on the gender gap in AI adoption. She highlights the critical need for upskilling and underscores the importance of understanding AI's strategic application to stay competitive and minimize the risk of losing your job. At the end of this episode, you'll hear practical tips on effectively leveraging AI tools and future-proofing your career. You're listening to Living While Leading with your host, Sharon Ehrlich, where I help women IT executives gain more control over their careers and carve out time to care for themselves and family. Welcome, everyone, to the Living While Leading podcast. Hello, my name is Sharon Ehrlich, and I am an executive coach and founder of Living While Leading. This is an executive coaching practice that supports women leaders to gain control over their careers and their lives and work with purpose. This is a show where I invite top business executives and thought leaders to share their wisdom on leadership topics which are of particular interest to women and the development of professional careers. I'm very happy to share with you today that I have Dominique Rose Van-Winther as my guest. Today, we're going to be talking about artificial intelligence, survival, and overcoming genius gridlock. Welcome to the show, Dominique. Can you please introduce yourself to everyone?
Yeah, so thank you so much, Sharon, for inviting me, and to everybody who's joined today. I've been in consulting about 25 years, Danish American, lived all across the world. But I've always really been a tech person at heart, whether working with technology companies or bringing technology into the firms that I worked at. Over the past about year and a half, I have focused almost entirely on AI and really figuring out how do you start to bring that into the organization? How do you upskill everyone? And that's the company that I lead, Final Upgrade, which I'm not only CEO of, but Chief AI Evangelist, which is a role that I understand as being one of the most important roles in order to execute on the digital transformation that's going to be coming.
This is a topic that I think is very important. Everybody's been buzzing about it since ChatGPT has become available to all of us. And I think it's really key that we get ahead of it and not fall behind. So if it's okay with you, Dominique, I'm going to jump right into some questions that I have for you, which I think may be of interest to my audience. So the first one is, how are women leaders adopting and adapting to AI compared to their male counterparts?
Well, look, I've been spending the last about year and a half training thousands of people. And my biggest concern, especially over the course of last year, when everything was just starting to catch on, was I would be doing a session for a couple hundred people. And I would say, who here has been dabbling, tried out this platform, tried out that platform, all sorts of new tech that was coming out in the AI space? And you'd see a lot of male hands going up. And my concern is there were very few women's hands going up, or they would come into the session and I would say, how are you doing with AI? What have you been trying out? And they go, I don't know what this wall is that all of a sudden very often happens when they put up both hands and go, you know what? I'm not super tech friendly. It's not exactly my thing. And my biggest concern when I saw that is there's going to be a massive setback for women as a whole, as the industry and every part of our business gets innovated upon and shifts into a new dynamic. And if you haven't started upskilling yourself, when layoffs come, they're going to come first to those people who are behind on using the newest technology. So I've seen a very vast difference in terms of women's ability to just get a little bit more curious, get a little bit more interested with the tech and experiment. Now, it's not across the board. You'll see women who are running, for example, startups or involved in startups are a lot more agile, quick, easy to pick them up, almost because you have to. But my worry is a lot of people that are working in big corporates, and especially women who are leading departments and practices and functions, are going to put themselves at a setback, because the future leaders of those companies and the board and the shareholders, they all want people who can adapt to the coming change. And my worry is women are already at somewhat of a disadvantage in those senior roles. And that might continue to happen even more pervasively because of a setback in using the existing technology that's out there.
And what do you think is behind that, Dominique? Is it a matter of awareness, or is it something a bit deeper?
Well, there's a couple of different elements. So number one, lack of awareness is happening with everybody. Nobody has the roadmap to AI. This is what I teach executives at the C-suite, to regular employees, to functional groups every single day. And no one has been sat down and explained. The only people who are talking about AI on stage, it's either the more fluffy topics, like let's talk about ethics, or is the world in doom and gloom going to happen with AI, etc. They're very future-looking topics and issues that obviously we need to address. But nobody's addressed the elephant in the room. How do we actually use it? How do we bring it into the company? How do we upskill people? And my concern is that women sometimes don't go and maybe push themselves into using new technologies. They tend to lean into relationships rather than necessarily technology, which is phenomenal, right? That is absolutely our superpower. But I think it's just not an area that we're necessarily as savvy in taking the first steps into. And we're seeing that a lot of companies are not yet ready to go and educate all of their employees because they're still figuring it out themselves.
Can you share some statistics about the current state of women's adoption of AI in business? And if you have data, what do those numbers reveal about the gender gap?
Yeah, well, there's very few surveys that are out there that we can consider legitimate, mostly because we see a lot of information from, let's say, OpenAI on how much of the population is using their platform, but it's very skewed. When in reality, if you start to survey the population, I've seen stats like, for example, 54% of men use AI on a daily basis in their professional or personal lives. That percentage is cut down to 35% with women. My challenge is mostly when it comes to also the ascension of women into more senior positions, we're already at a disadvantage. It's already a smaller percentage of leaders of businesses. And if we don't have more women leaders in the space, then that's going to be very difficult. And if you think about it, even there's fewer women in tech, and therefore, and I think the stats are something like 67 to 75%, depending on the industry, of tech jobs are men. For example, I was speaking at a session not too long ago, Women in Data Centers, which everyone came together in Singapore. Is a fantastic event. I've never seen a group of women so united and feeling like such solidarity, because there are so few of them. But there were very few women leaders that are running businesses, running departments, running functions. And because of the fact that they aren't entering the space, they don't end up bringing that also into other areas of business. So nowadays, you don't have to go to become your CTO or your head of IT in a technological role. It's the equivalent of, are you using Excel? And if you're the leader who's not using Excel, then, oh boy, are you in trouble for the future. And that's my biggest concern, is people are seeing it as a technological question. And really, it's a basic competency that everyone needs to be learning.
I think that's a really interesting point, reframing it as a basic and fundamental competency that everybody needs to have. Are there any particular AI applications or innovations that you believe have been underutilized by professional women? And why do you think these tools have not been embraced?
Sharon, nobody's teaching them. That's the problem. The only education that we're getting at the moment at all of the major conferences is how to buy more tech and pile it on in terms of a firm. They are not focused on change management. They are not focused on upskilling employees. And that's what I focus on day in, day out. So I'll give you 2 tips. Number 1, everybody tends to use, whether it's ChatGPT or Gemini or Claude or whatever platform you're using from an LLM perspective, large language model. If you're using those for research, that is not their purpose. Their job is to, like a 6-year-old, figure out and predict how to win mommy's gummy by crafting up the absolutely perfect sentence that you want. Its job is not to do research. But if you go check out Perplexity AI, you will forever remember how fantastic this tool is at finding everything from a research perspective. Simple tool, but nobody talks about it. And the problem is, and it's from the C-suite all through organizations, because we're not empowering companies to bring more technology in because companies don't know how to deal with it. The other thing I would highly recommend, download the ChatGPT app on your phone, get a subscription. It only costs $20 anyway. But when you open it up, there's absolutely fantastic other AI that's embedded in it. Now, pretty much everybody's used ChatGPT. I'm not naive in thinking so, but how you're using it is wrong. So when you have the dialog box, there's a little button with a microphone. I have an iPhone. Down here, there's a horrible button at the bottom right. That's Apple's embedded microphone for dictation, and it doesn't work all that well. But the one that's in that box, that's a different API that is voice to text, and it's an OpenAI completely separate tech. What you should be doing is thinking about how do you use this as almost your virtual assistant. Let me give you an example. I need to write a follow-up letter to Sharon to say, thank you so much for having me participate in your fantastic podcast. In addition, we had a couple of follow-up things. I need to send her a deck that includes some more information because a couple of people asked for it. And then we wanted to schedule also a coffee in a couple of weeks. Let's see, today's the 19th of June. So let's schedule it for some time in mid-July. I don't know, pick one of the Wednesdays that's that week, and we can grab a coffee while we're out in Singapore or a glass of wine. And by the way, also tell her that I was going to introduce her to Bob, who lives in New York, because I think he's going to be an absolutely fantastic business partner for her, right? Sign it off from Dominique, and then go ahead and write it in a fairly informal and friendly way. People don't write prompts like that because it takes way, way too long to write that. But that's how I write prompts. It will dictate out that entire message. And then when you go into your ChatGPT, you can see, now this is a prompt, right? An entire paragraph with all sorts of information. And then when I load it up, I have an entire email. What you should be doing is treating these platforms as something that you're going and sharing all of your information into. And then as a result, it's taking you to the 8 out of 10 in terms of everything you're developing. And what people tend to do is they go and they ask it for a template letter, and then they copy it over, and then they rewrite the entire thing. Well, why did you even use AI? Because then that's pointless. You might as well just Google and ask for a standard template. Or they write a fantastic note, and then they stick it into AI and say, make it better. And it removes every element of humanity that was originally in that note and turns it into what I love to coin robot talk, because it is the most nonsensical, emotionless conversations that you could be having is sending that back and forward. You have to master how to use AI to come up with your tone of voice. So you sound like a human, but you're still using AI. These are all tips, tricks that are readily available out in the world. They're just not being pulled into a corporate environment. And therefore, employees are either not empowered to be using those new technological platforms because they don't have access to them, or they're using it as shadow IT, which means they're using it without their IT departments actually knowing about it, which is obviously a really pervasive issue at the moment.
Right.
It's a real shame because there's massive opportunities to already be bringing it into the business.
Well, first off, thank you for that example. I think that really demonstrated the power. And I mean, it literally took seconds for that prompt to be transmitted or transformed into something meaningful that you could use. So, I mean, you're talked about how people aren't educated, that they're missing this useful piece of information on how to leverage the AI in a way that is part of their daily life effectively. So what are the systemic changes that you think need to be put in place to address exactly this lack of education and knowledge that you just described?
I think we need to take everything that relates to AI out of the IT department solely. because the IT department or CTOs and whatnot are fantastic people at bringing tech into an organization. But when the tech has to be used by everyone, this is why I've coined this idea of the chief AI evangelist. You have to find your company's evangelists that understand the tech, but they're not experts in just technology. They know how to bring that into HR. If you want to read an example that's absolutely fantastic, you read up on the Moderna case study on Open AI's even website. And it's how they literally went function by function, team by team, and built 750 GPTs in order to solve all sorts of problems. Do you know who led the way? The woman who heads up legal, because she goes, there's a massive bottleneck. And she goes, do you know how easy it is for AI to go and check whether it has all of our standards, terms, and conditions, and if there's any red flags? So they went and built it and eliminated an entire huge bottleneck at Moderna, obviously one of like the biggest pharma companies in the world. And in essence, released all of that bottleneck, but they can't do that until they go into the functional teams and sit down with people and build something relevant and then educate them on it. And then on the other side, there's all the elements of upskilling, because you have to take the time to bring people on a journey. You can't just rely on the fact that later you're going to have to cut your team members in half because of all of the innovation that's happening. You have to kind of bring them on a journey, retool them, and move them around the organization so that you can keep a hold of some of your most valuable assets.
Taking AI out of the CTO's imperium, or they're
just not solely in the CTOs. I don't mean that they shouldn't be involved, and they obviously help in order to help from a technology side. You can't just have that side. When you're rolling out AWS or Amazon Web Services, there's no problem leaving it with the CTO. If you're rolling out different cloud computing platforms or enterprise software, it's fine with the CTO. This is not the case. This is a consumer more product that we need to upskill and train people. And so therefore it should be done in collaboration together. And what I'm seeing most of is the fact that it's run by the tech side with not enough bringing it in, and therefore people aren't being upskilled in order to use it. So great technology being brought in, but very little usage.
I think that what you just said is extremely powerful. Just a quick question, not that I want to create a TV commercial about your business, but is that what Final Upgrade does? Is that how what you're doing is you're helping organizations strategize how to bring AI in a more practical way throughout their entire organization?
Yes, we look at business strategy from many different layers. You look at it at the personal layer, which is what I'm talking about. How do you upskill individuals? Then you look at it at the team or the function level, because you should be looking at what technology you should bring in for the legal department, the marketing team, the comms team, finance, et cetera, because it might be different tools and different things that we want to enable people and empower them to be able to use. Then you look at the product level, because obviously sometimes there's elements of AI that should be embedded in whether it's the customer, the client experience, or whatever product it gets put out there. And then you look at the company level, which is a lot more organization transformation and how to realize and find where you have optimizations along the value chain so you can better build proficiency and efficiency within the business. And then we also look at the category and what consumers and customers and everything like that are doing. Most of my time is spent public speaking, running workshops, educating people, because in reality, that's the stage that we're at right now, where a lot of leaders of businesses are just under an enormous amount of pressure to try to do something in AI. But nobody really knows what to do. There's not a real roadmap in order to be able to figure out what's right. And if you go to conferences, all you see is people who are selling like big, huge technologies that you can come and integrate into your company at enormous cost and enormous amount of time. And I'm not saying any of those are the wrong decision. I'm saying there isn't a very clear framework to prioritize what you should be doing within the organization. So we focus on a lot more of the upskilling and just educating business leaders to kind of navigate the space.
Let's going back to women, because you know that the whole conversation we have here is really to inform women about how they need to take control of this whole AI movement and skill up. What do you think of some of the strategic advantages AI offer women that they probably haven't considered just yet?
If you're an early adopter,
Mhm.
you're going to be ahead of the game. It is so early days at the moment. And that's why I've been on a vengeance to go get more women up on boards and in leadership positions. Because if you think about it, the future people who are going to be hired to lead organizations, and I'm not talking the future in 5-10 years, I'm talking in the next 1 to 2 to 3 years. Every single leadership position has to understand AI. They're at about a 1 out of 10 right now. You're the person who leads at the front end of that. You can pick your job. You can pick your seniority because it's going to be the absolutely most in-demand role in order to really understand it. And I'm not talking about going and doing a 3-day course online, an hour each day. That's not knowing it. You need to figure out business applications. You need to start to dive into it a little bit. Do it slowly, but invest the time in order to make yourself, instead of a dabbler, somebody who's a bit more advanced and more proficient, and your career will just skyrocket. There's so many people right now worried about layoffs, so many people that are worried about what the future holds. Upskill yourself. This is one of very few bets that will help you to skyrocket your career far faster than everyone else. And I give that advice all the time. And in fact, all of the sessions that I do, we charge quite on the premium side for a lot of the workshops and the trainings and the talks that I do. I have an entire pro bono stream of ones that I do for any women audiences. I want us to win. I want us to do phenomenally better, and I want us to narrow the gap between men and women by more women actually stepping into this tech and being able to lead organizations through change. Because you know who does it the best? Often women. Very phenomenal leaders through change, through transformation, when you have to educate, when you have to talk to employees, understand their hardships, understand how they're using technology. These are phenomenal skill sets for women to have. So all you need to supplement that with is some basic knowledge of AI. I just see the advantages to be massive.
I'm sure we have a lot of listeners who are saying, that sounds great. And I've bought into your message, Dominique. I want to get started, but I don't even know where to start. What would you say to that person?
You know what? It is so easy nowadays to get into the space because really every single big tech company is on board, even with slightly product agnostic, but not entirely. Tools, universities, online schoolings, etc. Check out the ones from Google, Meta. All of the Coursera courses from all of the major universities now have started to launch more modern generative AI solutions. You don't have to go into what are linear regression models with machine learning. Most people don't want to do that, but that's also not where the technology is. You don't have to know programming. You don't have to understand how machine learning is done. You need to understand the business application for it and start to use it and change your behavior on a daily basis. There are a lot of different platforms that are out there to educate. Look at LinkedIn, look at Coursera, and look at Google. They've launched entire curriculums that are about generative AI, how to use it. They're very high quality. Whatever you do, don't look at anything that's more than a year old, because technology of AI as of a year and a half ago transformed. And it now moves 10 times faster. It moves that much more quickly through the organization, and it's in rapid acceleration mode. So if you go and listen to a program that's, I don't know, IBM from 5 years ago, they'll talk about the fact that to build up a solution, you need a full year. If I wouldn't told any of our clients that it's going to take them a year to develop something, they'd laugh me out of the hallway, because that just doesn't work in today's day. It's all just exponentially growing. So we build stuff that's in 4 or 6 weeks. Fast prototyping, running it, scrappy, quick, and moving quickly. If you're not learning that sort of tech that moves at the speed of light, you're not in the right program. Look for the ones that are very modern, and ideally within the last 6 months. That's when the best ones come out.
I think that's wonderful advice, and actually very prescriptive and descriptive. So thank you for that. You talked about the rate of speed in which AI is moving and how things just in the last 18 months have just moved forward like gangbusters. Are you able to share your thoughts on what you think the future of AI is in business and how that's evolving?
Yeah, I mean, I think everything is going to be optimized. The strongest companies are going to go through their entire value chain, set up their entire systems from start to finish. If you start using, for example, AI for data analytics right now and using some of the platforms, you can see it already can make strategic recommendations, analyze data. It won't be 100% correct on the data, but the recommendations will be exactly the right direction. That means you don't need to have these big analyst teams, et cetera, in the future. So the roles of the future will be either very senior roles or relationship roles. I also see a lot of concern because even if, for example, where I'm based in Singapore, you look at the majority of jobs that are out there, it's front office, back office, finance, lawyers, consultants, et cetera. And we've had no evolution and innovation in that space, really. You think about automotive manufacturing. They had all of the innovation of robotics that came in, but our space, we've had computers, how long did it take to roll those out? Mobile phones, how long did that take in order for everyone to start to get those? You're looking at this technology that's being adopted so fast that within 3 years, everyone's going to be using it. And it's going to transform how we work, and it's going to destroy a lot of jobs. And I only say that not as a threat, it's more as an opportunity, because you're going to have to reskill yourself on how to lead that organization and lead those teams through that change in order to help everyone. Because when it comes to a lot of those cutbacks, even customer service, I've seen some phenomenal platforms that go and create AI avatars and run entire customer service calls. If you haven't seen the Klarna case study, that's about them eliminating 700, that's the buy now, pay later button that you see on e-commerce. They eliminated 700 roles, and AI took over like 75% of all of their customer service. And you know what? Customers were over the moon. So the entire future is changing to the point that when you call your bank right now and you go, hey, do you want a teller or do you want like the machine? And you're like, oh my God, I just want the teller, because of course it's useless right now to actually get all of the automated systems. Everything's going to transform, because you'll be like, I want to be like Klarna, because they cut down all of their interactions from like 11 minutes to 2 minutes. Every customer would be happy with that. And that's how it's going to transform our customer experience, our client experience, and how we work with each other. But it's going to require a lot of rewiring within our own systems, our company systems, and our own personal ones.
Dominique, this has been a very enriching conversation. I first like to thank you for being with us and for speaking so openly about this topic. I think it was extremely useful. How can people find you?
Yeah, so I'm on LinkedIn, Dominique Rose Van-Winther. That's where I publish most of my stuff. I also have a Substack that you can join that is for Final Upgrade. You can see links to it also from my LinkedIn profile. I have all sorts of updates and all sorts of information that I put out on my LinkedIn in order to give kind of tips and tricks and help to navigate the space. So feel free to reach out. Feel free to follow me. And I'll continue to share everything that I know, because I'm a very firm believer that we all deserve a lot more information. I sell my business to corporates, not like the individual side.
Thank you, everybody, for joining in. Thanks for listening today. This is your time. Give yourself permission to reclaim what's important to you and be who you want to be. If you're getting value from this podcast, please subscribe, share it, or write a review. And connect with me on livingwhileleading.com or on LinkedIn. And don't forget to tune in next week.